So what I'm going to demonstrate today is a combination of mixed mediums that is not new to art, the idea of a resist, oil and water not mixing. But for me, it is a tremendous way for me to travel and sketch and do a mixed media piece, and even later do an oil painting from it. What I'm going to show you came as a result of an accident. I was teaching in France in this little town of Le Poet-Laval, and I had probably about 12 students that came to France with me, and one of them was a very good painter, Joni Bergen, and she was an oil painter. So we had set up easels on this lovely town on a hill, and she was painting, and all of a sudden there was a breeze, and her painting fell over, and it fell into the road, which was, you know, little stones and pebbles. And she picked up the painting, and she was upset with herself and started to pick at the pebbles. And I said, no, that won't. You're not going to be able to do that. Just use the texture of the pebbles, or forget about it. So she also was a watercolorist. So she said, I'll just do some watercolors. So she was doing a watercolor painting, small, and I had brought oil pastels with me. So I was doing oil pastels, and I said, why don't we combine them and work together? So we each started to draw the landscape. Then we used the oil pastels. And then I said, now let's use the watercolor on top of the oil pastels, and it will fill in all the spaces. We did that. That was summer of 1999. To this day, Joni is still doing those, and so am I, actually, only I've added the addition of a thin crayon, hard crayon, which gives a colored line of these Caran-d'Ache waxed crayons. So I have many examples. I had to show you 100 examples, but here's one that's looking through the window in Aix-en-Provence, and you see the patterns of the rooftops and buildings, and the mottled effect is really the watercolor coming, seeping in between the oil line and the oil filled in spaces. So when I travel, wherever I am, I do these charcoal sketches, which gives me the composition. So this is that same window, only from the inside of the apartment looking out. And this is in Wellfleet, Massachusetts. This is in Provincetown on somebody's porch that I went on and sketched from. And this is also a view of Provincetown along the beach. So I thought I would demonstrate how I go about it. This I was working on was of Italy, of a little courtyard in Cortona. And this was also in Cortona. So to show you the materials, basically when I sketch, I don't have the drawings up here. I use a charcoal, a kneaded eraser, and then fixative to fix the drawing part of it so it won't smudge out. Then I come in with these Caran-d'Ache crayons. I think I'll put my glasses on. And I pick any color. And I sort of go over the outline of what I want in a color. And say I'll take. It almost, with my work, doesn't matter what color, because I have so many colors in my artwork, but and I try to get the lines down in a color, which will stay a color because they're wax based, so they will not They will not bleed. Let's see. Oh, maybe it's a gray. So right now, basically, I just am sort of tracing over with any color I feel like, just to get some color lines down. Let's say I just fill in some colors. I'm keeping it really like a coloring book, actually. And let's say I tried some of the fatter ones. So I use them leaving lots of white spaces because I know I want the watercolor to work on these. So right now I'm just putting down some greens for grass or for meadow, whatever. I'm filling kind of big spaces so you can see it more easily. And let's say this is lavender growing. So let's do purples. Some skinnier, like trees in the distance. I don't even have all the colors here, but it's okay. Now, if I find that I want to outline things that so they really show up, I could go over with these Caran d'Ache crayons the house with a barn. Okay. You know what, I can measure. Okay. Now, all right. What if I get some water? I need a little water. And you can see that it's going to fill in the area. If it gets too thick, I can blot it, but it will resist with this watercolor. I mean with this oil pastel. So, okay, there, and let's say I do a light green. Maybe I'll make that later. You don't have to be too exacting. And again, you can blot as you want. Maybe blot too much. So each choice is different. Like you may put an opposite color over a color or one that's similar, and it will just show out differently depending on what color you choose. So you'll see I did let's fill it over here. So the oil pastel will certainly shine out, and the watercolor will just sort of take a back seat in that it'll fill in some of the white areas. And you can make it fill in greater or less, depending on what you want. You can use colors similar or very different. So it depends. It's interesting what oil I use underneath. This was a not as oily a one underneath, so it's not resisting as clearly. Let's try this. And looks like I should add some more color in here. I mean, you can get much more realistic than I am, or you can get totally abstract. It doesn't have to be a scene. You can just play around with the Caran d'Ache crayons, the oil pastels, and the watercolor, and you don't have to make a scene. It's just that for me, these are places I taught at, so. Of course, when I finish with it, it doesn't really look like where I've been, at least color-wise. But in the long run, where should I go? See if that red will come through. It's amazing how much less watercolor I use than when I oil paint. I use huge amounts of oil paint. But watercolor is like, it's hardly uses anything. It's not being too picky about this. And I'll do this, how about it just sort of fills in the white spots, and it sits on top of some of the oil pastels, and creates a really kind of neat texture. You would think it flakes off, but it doesn't. I don't know why. So you can see that it's starting to fill in, and the more that I fill in, the more that the work just combines. And every section is thought about. And as it turns out, every section gets filled. So it starts to sort of come alive in its own kooky way. I filled in some of the clouds. I'm just scribbling, mind you. I'm just putting it down. Leaving spaces to see how. There's a clear stick which is just wax without the pigment, and that would keep the paper white if it's on white paper. It would keep it whatever color the paper is. Okay, so I've got some of this down. Let's see what happens. Why don't I use a wider brush? Okay. And let's try. So you could have some soft, puffy clouds, just from the color resisting the iridescent oil stick. So, and then I would just keep going further with oil pastel, filling in parts of each section, and then just it could be very thoughtful, or it could be quite random which colors you combine with which. So it's fun. It's really like playing. But the fun part about it is that I probably traced the sketch first before I went over the paper, so I could redo the sketch however I wanted. Usually I don't go do oil pastel and then watercolor. I usually do all Caran d'Ache crayons, all oil pastel, and then some form of the watercolor last. I'm not as methodical. I mean, I don't go back and forth as I'm doing now usually, but it doesn't really matter. So anyway, I thought I would show you that, and this is something you can do. Just have your charcoal, your kneaded eraser, hairspray, a pump hairspray, oil pastels, and watercolor. And seriously can fit into a small container. So hopefully you give this a try too.